So here we are. I've got my bamboo blind laid out. I've already marked on here, I've used it a few times. This is a 60 centimetre, 2 foot-ish circle. Will give you plenty of spare, perhaps too much really, spare, but there's nothing worse than if your felt shrinks too small and you actually haven't got room to get your brim out of your hat. So, the process is, here's a fibre, there's 4 ounces of black alpaca here, and what you don't want are any gaps in your felt hat, so taking a bit of time here is well worth it. You want to get a smooth, an even layer all over, so what you don't want to do is work on your hat for 3 hours and then find that you've got gaps. So you can't do it in one layer. So you build up the layers over the circle as we go. So there are gaps here, but we're going to fill those in with subsequent layers. What's quite tempting to do, if you're doing thicker felt, obviously you get away with that a bit more because the thicker it is, then the less likely you are to have the odd gap. But I'm going to try and make quite a thin hat here, quite a thin felt. So if you get any bits as you go along, you can either not worry about them too much because the odd little bit of seed and grass and hay in the felt is all part of its character. But pick them out as you go along. A couple of grass seeds there. Feel free to fast forward past this bit. We're going to be here some time, but it's time well spent. You can always have a look at a gap there. I'm going to put a bit there. This fibre has been carded. I've got an old, probably about Victorian carding machine. So it's a lab carder, so it would have been used in a big wool processing mill to make sample runs of batches of fibre. Of course you can card by hand, or you needn't card at all. You can take it straight out the fleece. Again, you're not trying to make, or perhaps you are, but generally you're not trying to make something that looks like it's come out of a factory, like some sort of Indiana Jones fedora. You're making a handmade, bespoke craft product, and you don't have to worry too much about making it look factory perfect, because that's not the aim of the game. Just trying to even these layers up now. Anywhere that looks a bit thin, perhaps add a little bit more to get it even. So my machine cards it into what I call a cloud really. It's just a great big fluffy pillow of fibre. If you card on either by hand or on a drum carder, then you'll get a different sort of, you get a bat off a drum card, which is sort of a big flat slab of carded fibre. But you could do this straight off the raw fleece. And of course you can combine, if you want to have some different colours or a pattern, you can put some stripes of different colour fibre across to get a different effect. So you can see I've done the second layer at right angles to the first layer. Probably doesn't make any difference really, but just helps you to get this even sort of layer. I'm going to go the other way now. Again, these little bits of grass and seed, as you go along, you can take these out as well, but don't take them out as you see them. Bear in mind, this is going to be the crown of the hat just here, so you certainly don't want any gaps here. We're going to have quite a bit of spare around the outside, but my first hats ended up with no brims, so it's worth making it plenty big enough. So it's quite a good layout. We've got a little bit left. There's probably, I don't know, 3/4 ounce or something left. So I can't see any sort of bald spots. I say this is 4 ounces of fibre, and I weighed one of my hats just now before I started this, and the actual finished hat, dried out, felted, is about 1 ounce and 3/4, so there's quite a lot that isn't going to end up on the cutting room floor, as it were. Of course, this felts down to almost nothing really. Oops. Okay, I think that looks okay. So, you could wet this down now, but once your hands are wet and once the felt is wet, or the fibre's wet, then your nice even layer, it's very easy to end up pulling a gap in it. So, this is where the netting comes in. So, I'll put the netting over here. This is dried soap that's on it from last time, so that won't be a problem. So there we are. So, next move is we want to get, this is soapy water, so it's hot soapy water. In my equipment list before, I didn't mention I've got a kettle just sitting just on the worktop over there, so I have actually heated this up. So, as anyone will know who's accidentally felted their best jumper, what causes felting is the changes of temperature combined with movement. You don't necessarily need the change of temperature, but certainly if you've put something in a washing machine and you get a very delicate woolen item wet, or you wash it, as long as you don't move it about, there won't be any harm done. But as soon as you agitate it, all the fibres start to get tangled together. If you've ever thrown any of your phone chargers into a drawer and bits of electrical equipment, when you take them out 3 months later, all the cables have managed to tangle themselves into the most amazing mess. Well, that's a little bit like what's happening with the felt, really. Every strand of fibre has got little scales on it, and what happens as you work it and the fibres move is they ratchet together, they get tangled, and they move together, and they pull tighter and tighter. And the theory is that the soap gets the scales to open, and the change of temperature. Quite how much of any of that is true, I don't know, but that's really what we do. So the netting has stopped the fibre moving. If you, I'll do it on this little edge piece here, you can see once it's wet, it's very easy to move all this and make a real mess of it. So the netting just stops that happening while you get the first stage of the felting underway. So it's quite important to make sure that you've got all the fibre wet. It can appear to be wet, but there can be bits of it that are still dry. And again, the good thing about having sort of a dedicated felting area, whether it's on your draining board or it's your kitchen table or a table out in the garden, is good if the weather's good enough. It's the middle of January here, so I've got the fire lit behind me. Certainly not outside felting weather. And I know I've seen videos where people say that you get it too wet and they sponge the water off, but I just get it wet. Okay, so at the moment we've just got a pile of wet fibre. It's sort of compressed down, and you see it's ready to move and stick to your fingers and not work. So it's good to have some nice soapy water. So now we can just start to work the fibre just gently with your fingertips and just start to move it about. So if you're doing this without the netting, this would now all be tangled and sticking to you like these loose bits here. So we're just trying to gently agitate the fibres, just starting that process of them starting to just tangle together, really. What we're really trying to do is annoy the fibres into the shape of a hat, really. So I'm just using my fingertips and just agitating it all over, and it will just start to form enough of a sort of a skin, really, so that you can then take this off and start to work it direct, or work it with the bubble wrap. So we just keep working it like this. And the soapy water is just helping everything move about. And you can probably just hear my drainage system just working, and the excess water is just going into the bucket. So if you're careful, you can just have a look in here. You can see the surface there. You could work this with your fingers, but there's a danger that you're going to, at this stage, you're just going to move. You can see these fibres coming up here. You're just going to disturb it all, and you're going up with a hole in your finished felt. So you'll have noticed this isn't a hat shape. This is, we start off with a flat sheet of felt, and there are other ways of doing this. Commercially, they do it on a cone, so they have a great big cone like this, which is full of holes. They have vacuum drawing the air in through the holes, and then they'll blow the fibre. So usually rabbit, probably not much beaver used these days, so a lot of the hats, especially as hats are made of rabbit fur, so it's a very short, very fine fibre, obviously. So they blow a cloud of that in, and it's drawn onto the cone. So they start off with a cone like this, which then they shrink down to they make that into a hood, and they shrink that down into the hat. So you can do a version of that whereby you have half a cone shape, You do the fibres like this. You have a resist in the middle, so a piece of plastic or something, and then you do another layer on the top of that, and you join them around the edge by overlapping the fibres, and that'll give you a cone. But I find this way an easier way of doing it. Well, I don't know about easier, but it's the way I prefer. So keep working these fibres, and as they start to bind together, you can be a little bit more, not aggressive, but you can be a little bit firmer with it and get it moving about a bit more. The outside's all going to be waste and cut away, we needn't worry too much about that. Okay, so we've really got that, you know, it's starting to be, it's certainly not felt, but it's starting to work its magic really. I'm going to give that a little bit more, and then we'll move on to the bubble wrap. So we're going to take this flat sheet and suede it first into a cone on the dome initial shaper, and then into the hat. And the more you work the felt, the more it tightens up and it shrinks. It shrinks in the direction that you work it. So if you rub it this way, it will shrink this way. If you rub it this way, it will shrink this way. And we use that to our advantage when we start to get the hat shape. And the question is, doing it this way is how tightly you want to felt it. A lot of the felt that you see is really, there's a stage which is known as pre-felt, and it's the start of the felting process, but it's not really felted properly. And if you were to felt this sheet of felt as tight as it's ever going to get, you're not then going to have enough give to form the hat shape. So you've got to kind of get it felted and then make a decision as to how much you felt it before you start to work into the hat, because the actual work on the block will felt it a lot. So I'm going to take the netting off, and I'm going to move on to the bubble wrap. So order a bubble wrap, you get different sizes, but this is the usual size. Just off whatever your Christmas present was delivered in. So bubble side down. So you can see me working there with my fingers on through the netting. So this is like lots of little different fingertips. And the beauty of this is, let's see if we can find the soapy water. There it is. The beauty of this is a little bit of soap, so it's already, the fibre itself is full of soapy water. A little bit of soapy water on the top. So now it's very, so now you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the video there, but as you move it, all the bubbles are all moving around. So now as you rub your hand over it, it's like 1,000 fingertips. So you can move this in every direction. So you just now rub this all over, and each little bubble is working like one of your fingers. You go in every direction, round in circles, up and down. And as I mentioned just now, it shrinks in the direction you rub it. If we just keep going that way, it will shrink this way. So you want to go in every direction, and you start to bring the felt, start to make it into a piece of felt rather than just a pile of fibres. Applying reasonable pressure on here, but it's a movement more than anything that's going to make it form a piece of felt. So you start to have a look, and again just test it at the edge, don't do it in the middle where if it's not felted, but you can see here now those fibres are starting to work together quite well. Use both hands. my right arm to be ambidextrous. Try and work both hands together, keep it moving. There's no fast solution to this, you just have to keep working it. If you move on to the rolling stage, which we're going to come to, if you move on to that too soon, then what starts to happen is, because it's not, if you think of the layer of what is now felt, so we would imagine it's expanded to this thick, the outer layers will be felted, the middle is probably just a pile of loose fibre, and if you roll it you start to get creases in it, so it's worth spending some time at this stage. So I dare say we can probably pick that up now. That probably is, you know, that's it. That is now a piece of non-woven fabric rather than a pile of fibres. So it's already started to become a piece of cloth. So you can carry on with the bubble wrap, but I'm going to get a bit hands-on here now, I think. You can see it's quite wet. Obviously we haven't worked the back, but it will get worked through the process. So be brave and turn that over. A bit of the old bubble wrap treatment. Bubbles down. Soapy water so your hands move over it nice and easily. And it's tempting to rush this because I'm videoing it, but I'll try and resist. If you're doing a piece of flat felt, there are ways of speeding this up. You can rolling it up and tying it and putting it in a cold tumble dryer, so it just keeps thumping over and over. It's a tremendous way of tightening your felt up, to the point that you've got to be careful it doesn't just become one solid tube of felt, rather than, it's quite difficult to unroll it sometimes because the layers have all stuck together. It felts it so well. Pour some hot water on this. I'm not entirely sure that it makes much difference, but it doesn't hurt, so I'm going to do that. you don't do this too early, when you find that the water will separate all the fibres. I can put the netting back on here, I should really do that. Too idle. It smells of hot alpaca. Okay. So the theory being that will have opened up some of the scales, and then we tangle them all together before they've got a chance to, as they close it, tighten the felt up. The thing that will tighten this up the most is when we start rolling it and beating it up and annoying it. So, next process is rolling. So I'm going to roll the the bamboo curtain rail around. I'll do it from the other end. So I'm going to roll it around the piece of pipe insulation. Just to give it a larger diameter. I could just roll the blind up just to give it, but this gives it a larger diameter, which perhaps stop it creasing if it's not quite felted enough. So, this rolling action really tightens the felt up. So this is really where we're starting the felting process. And you can see the water coming out as we go. The fibre is unwashed, so the dirty colour is just the alpaca's unwashed fleece from years in the field. Alpacas always look very well groomed, but they're not. They're just where they are. Okay. So there, I mean, that's made a real difference. That's really tightened that up. So I'm going to turn that round 90 degrees. Try and get it as flat as we can. But you can see it has become, it's still a bit loose, but it's become a piece of cloth. It's not just a pile of fibres anymore. So I'll turn that round at right angle and I'll roll it the other way so it shrinks in that direction. So again, if this was just going to be a piece of flat felt, if you've done this as something decorative with some different colours and things laid in it, then this is what you would do. You keep rolling it until you've got it into a really tight piece of felt. But we're going to make this into a hat, and we still need some of that felting to happen as we make it into the shape of the hat. So it's just a matter of striking that balance. don't want to have any creases in this because you will felt them into it and that's it, they'll be there forever. So you then have to decide that they were an artistic feature. This is very definitely still at the pre-felt stage. It wants plenty of work yet. It definitely feels like a piece of cloth already, I have to say. All the stuff around the edge is going to be waste. It's not going to be involved in the hat, but it's still nice to sort of tidy it into felt and not have loose bits everywhere. I'm going to give it a couple more rolls and then I'm just going to accept it's definitely pre-felt, but we're going to take it at that stage onto the dome and start to, it'll keep felting as we work it, so it's a felting process that tightens it into the shape of the hat. So. I'm not using the piece of pipe insulation because just rolling this blind up gives it quite a nice round shape for rolling. Okay, so if that was going to carry on and be a flat sheet of felt, you would keep working it. I'm going to move on to turning it into a hat. So I'm going to not roll that up, I'm going to leave that to dry because you don't want that to rot, so you need to find somewhere you can air your blind. Put it back up at the window, I suppose. Okay, so we are going to turn it to that shape, but you will see it's quite difficult to go from that in one go. So we do a bit of an intermediate stage. When we do it on here, you can do it on a bowl or whatever you've got. So this piece of felt we've got now is quite oversized, but it will shrink as we work on it. So, but try and get it reasonably centred. You don't want to find you've got no brim on one edge. Right, jumper off time. It's warm work. Some more soap solution, some soap, grated soap, and the hot water. Too hot. So soapy water, and as I think I said earlier, what happens is that the felt shrinks in the direction that you rub it. So to get all these creases out, we're going to work around the block here. And if you keep it quite wet, that helps it sort of stay on the block instead of flopping about. So this action here is certainly, it's still felting the fibre. So up and down we'll shrink it this way, and side to side is what will take all these creases out. So this is why you've got to judge at what stage you stop felting it as a flat sheet and start to work it this way, because it's still felting now and it's shrinking as we work it. So hopefully, you've got to work these outside edges because they will stop it coming together if you don't. You can see we've got plenty of spare material. So I'm using my fingertips and just getting in here, rubbing sideways, and that's making the fibres shrink in that direction. And as you do this, you find you've got lots and lots of excess material, and you think this will never ever shrink down to become a hat. However, it will. It just takes some effort. And you've got to work these bottom outside edge, that's got to shrink as this shrinks. And again, there's no shortcut to this. I can probably do this in about 3 hours if I really work at it. But you don't have to do it in one stage. You can get this far, you can go off and you can come back to this tomorrow or in a month. On the other side, there's a stop frame camera on the other side here, so I'll put that up as well so that you can see this whole process happen in about 1.5 minutes for those of you who've already lost the will to live. I'll just even those creases out a little bit. Plenty of water so that it all holds on the block as you work it. And you can see this dirty water. This is washing the alpaca fibre as we go. So it's come straight off the animal, straight through my carder, and straight onto the felting table. So this is its first wash. So what you do have to do is you have to felt this till it is stiff felt. The felt will reach, if you haven't done this before, it's worth just doing a sample piece, because there's a point when the felt suddenly starts to feel almost like a piece of leather. It becomes really stiff and tight, and that's really what you're aiming for. So the hat will hold its shape purely from being felted. But then there is another process that I will also share with you on another video of how to apply shellac, which stiffens a hat but still keeps it feeling sort of soft and like a piece of fabric. So that's like magic. Some fibres here that aren't really felting very well. That's probably just a bit of the fleece. It's probably a bit of the legs of the animal or the belly or somewhere where it's not quite as soft and fluffy, but again, I have further tricks up my sleeve to deal with all of that as well. So if the hat's a bit hairy when you finish, then that's where a razor and the dog clippers come in and give the hat a bit of a shave. So this is where you start to think this is never going to happen. But it will. So we're working it this way, because I'm trying to get it to shrink and take this excess fibre out, excess fabric out. And I'm going to cut all this really spare stuff off in a minute, because that's just, you know, giving us unnecessary work. And of course, if this shrinks here and that doesn't, we're just going to end up with an awkward shape there. So. But you need to make sure before you cut anything off, you've given it plenty of work, because if you really work this fibre, you can find that this is all shrunk back to here, and you don't want to cut something off that you then find you wanted for your brim later on. So a great big excess here. But we'll work this. When we've gone a bit further, I'll bring the washboard into play. But we're getting there. And make no mistake, this is a piece of fabric. It's not. I've had people say to me, what happens when it rains, because they think it's papier-mâché. It's not just stuck together. It is a piece of cloth. So Indiana Jones' hat that he takes through all those adventures is made of felt. So fedoras, trilbies, they're made of animal fur felt. India's hat is probably made of rabbit these days. We've got to remember to keep working all the parts here. But bear in mind we've got to reduce this further onto an actual hat look in a little while, so you still need some give in the felt, you still need to leave some work in the felt so that you can get it on the block. And do a bit of up and down as well, so we're shrinking all these parts in. There's a nice grass seed there, we'll let that go now. Work on this stuff that's outside the block, because that's got to shrink as well to allow this to come in. I've got my fingertips in here to really work the fibres. And again, plenty of soapy water to keep it sort of adhered to the block helps. It's a bit flailing about too much as you work it. Working on these outside bits to get those to shrink inwards, follow the curve. Shrink it in both directions, up and down as well with nice tight felt. And this is where this fulling area comes in here. We'll use that as well in a minute when we're working on the hat shape. This ridge surface really helps tighten the felt, especially if you can move it over it as we go. So you can see we're nearly there. We've almost got it flat over the entire shaping dome, so this is the first stage. Of course all of this is felting and felting as we're doing it. It's tightening the felt up, making it stiffer and stiffer as we go. Right, so we're about there really. So probably just worth working on these outer bits just in case we do need any of that. I think there's plenty here. There's more than we need to get the brim of the hat, but it really is worth making sure, because it's a lot of work to find you haven't actually got enough fabric for the brim. And again, if you were a bit short somewhere, remember your hat is going to be longer than it is wide, so you can try and remember which way round you were. That helps sometimes. I've got plenty of excess fabric here, look, so what I'm going to do, I can find where I put it, is get the washboard. The washboard works absolutely like magic to shrink the felt. You can start, if you do a sample piece the size of the glass area here and work it, you end up with a piece of felt about this big in the middle. It shrinks it down beautifully. I'm going to pop that off there and I'm going to give it a bit of a work on here. And tighten the felt up. So this glass is a reeded surface, and on top of each reed it's got a kind of a twist, a spiral shape on it. It's just absolutely fabulous for felting. Your ridges on your draining board will work quite well as well, so you can just do it on your draining board. But this is very good for tightening the felt up. But really, anything you do to it now, try not to use anything sort of very rough and spiky on it, because that will sort of drag the fibres out. But whatever you do like that will tighten it up. So I'm going to twirl that round and give these edges a bit of a going over. Let's try and tighten those, bring them in. Put the cameras on because that would be disappointing, wouldn't it? Yep. Give what is going to be the crown of the hat a bit of a going over as well. Because I have a magic ingredient which would mean you could make a nice stiff hat regardless really of how well it's felted, but you want it to be, you can make the hat and it can be stiff enough purely by the felting action, so that's really what you want to happen. Do it in both directions. So there are videos you'll find on YouTube. Look how dirty this alpaca was. Bless her. And even in early in the last century, this was very much a manual job, and you'll see lots of this going on at a fulling bench. And commercially, they used to use a weak sulfuric acid solution as a felting agent, and they allegedly should test the strength of the sulfuric acid by tasting it or putting it on their tongue and seeing how acidic it tasted. But all of this stuff, or throwing, the thing you can do is you can roll this up, tie up a couple of elastic bands and throw it. This is much like the action that's in the tumble dryer. And the tumble dryer thing, if you roll this up, you put a cloth around it, I use like a J-cloth type thing, a couple of elastic bands around it, put it in your tumble dryer for 20 minutes, and the felt is changed so much, it's remarkable. However, we are now going to go on to the hat block. So I make these blocks, we sell them, so you can buy one if you want one of these. Equally, you can just use whatever you can improvise with. But for 30 odd quid, you might as well have a proper hat block. So you can see we're back to square one really. We've got lots of creases and wrinkles. But if we're going from the flat sheet straight to this, it's a lot of work. So the dome really helps. So we're going to carry on now and do the same again. So we want this to shrink this way, and we want it to shrink that way. So this is going to be I'm going to start working on the top here and try and get it to shrink upwards. If we get this shaped in here now and tight on here, and then we shrink this, and the part that we've got tight here will end up shrunk back up here. I've actually done that with, I put little spots of white fibre, white wool into the along the brim so that you can see it, and I put a spot here that's ended up here. So we'll work from the top down. And that will be fine. It's still a bit pre-felty. For most people that's probably absolutely fine as it is, but the difference when you've got it to really felt properly is marked, and you'll be proud of yourself if you really get it stiff and tightly felted. This probably could have been felted more in the flat stage, but anyway, you've just got to take that sort of gamble. But this is a slow craft process, that's all there is to it. So all of this is carrying the felting on. We're moving the fibres in every direction. So whether you might want to do this in some gloves, some washing up gloves. Work up and down here. I'm going to get felting in all directions along here. You can also get some very nice, I've seen someone do some very nice wooden fulling blocks, which is a very highly varnished wooden block with sort of ridges, so a bit like this but portable so that you can get involved. I'm doing it with my fingers. But the more you work it, the better your felt will be. But this is pulled down onto the actual block shape very nicely. Probably because I haven't felted it enough at the flat stage really. But it's too late now. I'm working this up and down, and I can feel it actually pulling. It's pulling this the material in the brim towards it as I go. It's all tightening the felt. Just keep irritating it until it becomes a hat. I'm just going to stick the kettle on, get some more hot water. You can have a look at the hat while I do that. There's me filling the kettle on. Because obviously this is a soak, it'll all wash out. So I'm going to pour some boiling water on this as well, and it all helps in theory, whether it does or not, but it all helps the sort of work the fibre, open the scales up and close them again. It gets tighter and tighter as we do it. So you remember on my block here, I've actually got some ridges that I've put in. So that's kind of worked as a fulling board as we go. Of course, it's a tighter radius on this end here, so there's more work to do. So this material right around the edge I'll cut off in a moment, because all that's doing is giving us extra work that we don't need. That's not going to shrink in by that much now. But I still want to work on this, on the crown. So by rubbing up and down, that's tightening the felt vertically. So that'll be pulling in the fabrics around the outside. You may find when you do this that you end up with some ridges around here that you just can't get rid of. Well, you do the best you can, and then when you make another one, if you make another one, then you learn and you do it better. But this is the advantage of not over felting that first flat stage. We're leaving lots of the felting to be done here, really. But it does need to be felted. You don't want this just to be a baggy fit on here that's stuck on by the soap. This wants to be tightly felted onto the crown. And again, this wants to be done in both directions. You want a piece of good felt. So when you first do this, you'll think, yeah, this is never ever going to become flat and become a hat, but it will. You will be surprised. You've got to bring this bottom of the crown in tight, because that's what shows up how much fabric you've got to bring in around here. Right, I'm going to cut some of this stuff around the outside off. I'm not using these because you have to use these, it's because I can't find my scissors. So be very wary about cutting too much off. You wouldn't want to be cutting here because you really don't know how much that's going to shrink, but I may as well get rid of this because this is just giving me extra work that I don't need. He says. Nearly too much off. Okay, so I suppose it's not a huge amount, is it? But it's still spare. Okay. Boiling water, but obviously do not burn your hands. Again, looking good from here. So you could give that a cold shot now. Make sure it does any good, it could do. Turn it around so you can see it. But this is with a swivel here. That's the way it is. It's just a matter of keep working away. Keep working. Remember, it shrinks in the direction we work it, so I'm going to work it around in that shape so we get the outside of this to shrink round. You can see the felt is, I know there's soapy water in there, but it's quite stiff. It's reaching that stiff stage now. You see the washboard works like magic. tighten it up. Where we're going with that. The other thing I've done sometimes is to use steam. I've got one of those domestic steamers that you clean your floor tiles or your bathroom tiles with, and that seems to help, but I thought I'd do this video without anything that's not going to be readily available to everybody. Get tight into this crease here. Bear in mind, what I would do with my hats is I put a Petersham ribbon hat band around here, sewn to the size that fits whoever's going to be wearing it, so that will stop the hat spreading anyway, and the same on the inside. But you still want to get it as well felted as you possibly can. So you could certainly take longer than I have on this, and you could probably get a tighter piece of felt, but I have to say that's probably not too far off. But the more you work it, the better it will be. Give it some more boiling water. That's interesting. You can see there it's actually repelling the water there, which when it's really well felted, you could fill it. You can use it as a bowl and fill it with water. It becomes a different animal. Instantly regretting getting bits of solid soap all over it. Work those out now. Certainly when you finish you want to rinse it so that there's no soap left in it. So what I do is once these have dried, and if you're patient you leave it on the block to dry. If you're impatient like me you take it off the block as it is and you carefully stand it up so it can air better over a radiator or something. But once it's dried, you will, just because of it being made of natural fibre, you get sort of a fuzzy finish to it, and I actually take a pair of dog clippers and I shave it, or you can actually use a razor and shave it. Or I've also seen a video where they get some alcohol meths or something, put it on it and set fire to it, but I think that's probably a bit drastic. And then to stiffen the hat, it doesn't necessarily need stiffening. Certainly this will be fine as it is. Hat band round, it's best felt in the world. You want a hat band round it to keep it the size it's meant to be. But once it's dry, then what I use, I get some shellac, so French polish, which is for woodworking. So you buy it in a little bag. And if you're doing it to polish your grand piano, what you do is you dissolve that in methylated spirits. And much as I love the smell of methylated spirits, every time you get your hat wet, it smells of mess. So you can buy almost pure alcohol. It used to be very hard to get hold of, but it's actually, you can buy it in B&Q now. They sell it for those stoves that are fueled by alcohol. So you buy a litre of that, and you mix some shellac flakes in it, and it becomes this colour. It's shellac, not whatever you thought it looked like, and spray it onto your hat, and it dries, but it dries so you wouldn't know it there. It stiffens the hat. It's what was used commercially, probably still is. It dries, it leaves your hat feeling like a soft piece of felt still, but it's rigid. It is absolute magic. Some people sell solvent-free water-based ones, and really what they are is like a white PVA wood glue. And I don't like it, I have to say. I think it's nasty stuff. And a lot of people who are selling it are they probably are buying 5 litres of wood glue for 10 quid, diluting it down and selling it to you for 200 quid. So I will do a little video with the shellac somewhere else, possibly on this hat. So okay, we can keep working this for another 3 weeks, but I think really we can call that about done. And we'll just give it a little rinse. With some cold water. So I will rinse this off several times with hot water and cold water. You want to get all the soap out of it if at all possible. And you'll see that my self-draining felting table is very handy. I keep pouring the water on it, and as long as the bucket doesn't overflow, I've got about 3/4 of a bucket of water down there. There's something I perhaps haven't got anything to show you, but I've got a little electrical cable here. So I'll get a bit of string generally now and tie this tightly around the bottom. Pull that in nice and tight. So leave it to dry with that pulled in nice and tight around there. So you've got a nice sharp crease around the bottom. And leave it to dry like that. So I've neglected to have a piece of string handy, but If you do that, it'll just mean that you get a nice sharp turn there. So, could work on that a bit more, but that's certainly, let's shake it off and just show you. There it is. No, it's a wet. It's most definitely a felted hat. So I'm going to call that done and leave that to dry. So as I say, just a piece of string round the bottom, put a loop in it, pull it tight, leave that to dry. Once it's dry, when it's a little bit fuzzy, I'll just show you what I use. So once it's dry, these are my dog clippers. They are Wahl animal grooming clippers. I just go over and just shave it, and you get a nice smooth finish. I've also done it actually with a normal twin blade razor. So then, hat band, sweatband around the inside, nice lining, some bias binding around the outside. I'll show you all that in a later video, hopefully on this very hat. Okay. And that will be trimmed again. Bowler hats like John Steed wears have this clever shape, but traditionally and originally bowler hats just had a fairly flat brim, so you decide on the width of the brim that you want. Mark it carefully, put a lot of work into it at this stage. Cut it out, bias binding, you can put a bit of a jaunty shape into it. The advantage of the shellac is that you can steam your hat if it gets bashed and battered or sat on. You put it back on your block, you steam it just with your steam iron, and it goes back into a pristine shape. It also means you can shape your brim as well with the shellac, once the shellac's in it. So I would leave that to dry, put it on the draining board at an angle like this, so you'll see the water starts to run out. But it still takes quite a while to dry, there's a lot of water in there. But just be patient, let it dry, and then you're ready for the next stage. Okay, that's my way of doing it. Other people have different ways, but this is my self-taught and gleaned from the internet method. And have a go, enjoy.